The New Britain Board of Education, providing students with a high-quality education.
Okay, it is 6:15, or I think that's what it says, yes, 6:15, and I call this meeting of the New Britain Board of Education to order. Can we do the roll? No, no, Kristen has to go turn the TV.
We're still muted.
We're still muted, okay, good.
So you're going to have to say it all again.
We'll just do a take two, and,
Second verse, same as the first.
yep.
I was thinking of that, thank you for saying it.
Okay, it is now 6:16, and I call this New Britain Board of Education meeting to order. And let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Reyes, could you lead us today?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And you call the roll now?
Mr. Harold Gay.
Here.
Mr. Nicholas Mercier.
Here.
Dr. Violet Jimenez Sims.
Here.
Ms. Monica Dawkins.
She is absent.
Mr. Anthony Kane.
Here.
Mr. Joseph Listro.
Here.
Ms. Annie Parker.
Yeah.
Ms. Diana Reyes. Here. Ms. Gail Sanders Connolly.
Here.
Ms. Tina Santana.
Here.
Okay. And we don't have anyone who's called in, but I know that Mr. Form would like to offer some public comment.
Yes, good evening. I just want to take a minute. I know we have a busy night to briefly, but I think passionately acknowledge on our personnel transactions today that Len Cordo is retiring after 32 plus years of service to the district, service to students, families, and the community as a teacher, coach, and administrator. Len was recently named 2021 inductee into the National High School Athletic Coaches Hall of Fame, and there's an outstanding video on our website that talks about some of the great work he's done, and I recommend all taking a look at that. They specifically highlight all the work he's done helping students get into college. Len has helped countless students get into college, not just star athletes, but any student who needed his help. He made a lot of connections over the years and was always willing to use those connections to help his students. Personally, I first met Len probably on his first day in the district over 32 years ago. At that time, he was a health teacher and brought in as a head football coach. He was highly successful as a coach. His teams were always competitive, making the playoffs several times and winning a state championship. As an athletic director, he's a very strong advocate for student-centered policies and practices, and is highly respected throughout the state. Personally, I just want to note, which I think identifies his character well. When I first became principal of New Britain High School, on the first morning, Lenny came into my office and knocked on my door. And every day after that, he stopped and saw me or called me, and he asked me one question. He said, "Mike, is there anything I can do for you today?" And that's Lenny Cordo. So again, I'd like to publicly congratulate Lenny on his retirement, wish him and Deb a long, happy, and healthy retirement. Thanks.
And I realized that I skipped over a moment of meditation, so we can take a moment to collect our thoughts. Okay, and we have a board resolution.
Yes. I will beg everyone's forgiveness if this is a touch on the long side, but I think it's important. So, when discussing the rich diversity in our community, it is essential to acknowledge all of the ways in which we are diverse, whether visible or invisible, that make our district beautiful. From spirituality to family structure, gender expression, sexuality, ethnicity, or language, our community is enriched through countless forms of diversity. One form of diversity deserving its own recognition is neurodiversity. Challenges within neurodiversity are not always visible nor widely understood. Neurodiversity can take many shapes and forms, and one such form is autism spectrum disorder, ASD. The autism spectrum is extremely diverse and covers a wide range. Individuals on the autism spectrum have unique perspectives and ways of viewing the world. When we work as a community to understand and include the full range of neurodiverse perspectives, it enriches all of our experiences and understanding. Autism is a source of potential strength within our community, but deliberate equity and inclusion efforts are needed to leverage that strength. Members of our district community who are on the autism spectrum may require additional support as well as adaptive instruction to enable them to unlock their full potential. This requires us to aggressively fund our special education programs to ensure our neurodiverse students have their needs met. The CDC estimates that 1 in 54 children spanning every racial, ethnic, religious, and socioeconomic group have been identified with autism spectrum disorder. This is nearly triple the estimates from 20 years ago. Meanwhile, here in New Britain, nearly 1 out of every 38 students in grades K through 12 have ASD, over 40% higher than the national average. As our ability to identify students with ASD improves, these numbers will likely follow the national trend and continue to grow. Over the past few decades, public awareness and support of neurodiversity have grown. We continue to expand our understanding and move away from a time when ostracization, institutionalization, and exclusion were common practices. Here in New Britain, through our community partnerships, our KEY program has continued to grow. We are committed to continuing the work to ensure the best possible outcomes for all our students as autism impacts our families, our friends, our staff, and our community as a whole. Therefore, the Board of Education hereby moves to show their support for the rich neurodiversity within our city and school communities by declaring April Autism Awareness Month. We invite our families and community partners to continue to engage in conversations and advocacy around autism and the broader topic of neurodiversity. We ask that the district use this month as an opportunity to highlight the fantastic work being done by our staff in the area of autism awareness and inclusion. We urge Superintendent Sarah and our Consolidated School District family to continue to show support for neurodiversity, including autism spectrum disorder, through programs centering on awareness, acceptance, and understanding, not just in April, but throughout the school year. Submitted by Ms. Tina Santana, Dr. Violet Jimenez-Sims, and myself.
So, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second Tina Santana. And Dr. Sims. Okay, any, I don't know, do we have discussion? Okay, we have a seconded motion, so is there discussion on this?
I would just like to thank Dr. Sims, Ms. Santana, and also the district staff, Mr. Spalding, who helped put this together, draft this, provide revisions, edit it. I know this is a subject that is dear to many people's hearts, and I'm hoping that we can take this as an opportunity as a board to support the work that's being done by the district staff around this, because I think there's a lot of good things going on in New Britain with regard to this topic.
Anybody else want to make any comment? Behind me? Yes, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm going to plug for just a moment.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Nick and Violet for participating and partnering with me, and definitely for Mr. Spalding and the administration for assisting. As you all know, I have a son with autism. My other 3 are intellectually disabled. And so I would never have thought, if it wasn't for collaborating with these two courses here of including neurodiversity, right? Because we always say autism month, and we never even expanded to include neurodiversity as just a conversation piece. And I just want to thank all of you for at least giving me an opportunity to learn something from you and be able to share that with my children, that was able to put a name with them and in school, and it's amazing. It's really, really wonderful. It has opened up so many opportunities for us to better collaborate with our school staff. So thank you so much.
Okay. Anybody else like to speak on this? All right, seeing no other speakers, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right,
Did we look at participation?
Yes.
We did, okay,
Yeah, there was no one
okay.
who called in. He did that before meditation.
Making sure I
Cart course.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to the superintendent's report.
All right, it's quite long tonight. I don't have to read everything, but I did put celebrations up front. But the first thing before we do anything else, Matt, are you on the call?
I am, yes.
I'm so glad, Matt. Missed you. I want to walk all of you through, and Matt, if you could just explain it a little bit. We're going to have you all sign up for Amazon Smile right now with your device, so you don't forget. Matt and I had a good conversation about this today, because this is really our first group in the schools that is creating an account through Amazon where we get, it's fundraising, basically. And so then we said, well, all these other schools are gonna say, well, we want to do it too. And I'm like, great, because then we can just keep putting on our website, here are all the places you can donate. You can donate to our Academy Foundation, you can donate to the schools, you can donate to our PTAs, whoever puts it out there. And so what I would love is we get this around and we all shop Amazon. Well, not all of us, most of us do, right? And what better way? And it's an easy, effortless thing. So Matt, what do they have to do?
Yeah, so you'll see in the superintendent's report, there's a link to do it, and every organization that signs up has its own link. So what I'll do is I'll show you, if we put it on the website, which we will be putting on the website, and any other schools that sign up for it as well, or organizations within schools that sign up for it, we'll have a spot on the website for people to click on it. And basically, you're gonna see two screens, and I'll load up one right now. One, if you're logged in, and then two, if you're not logged in. And so what I'm showing you right now is the screen that you're going to see when you are not logged in. And so if you click on the link, you'll be brought to Amazon, and it will ask you if you want to make, in this case, New Britain Academy Foundation Incorporated, your charity of choice. And all you do is click Start Shopping, and then you shop. You sign up, they'll bring you to the sign up page to create an account, you enter your phone number, such and such, and then anytime that you want to shop on Amazon and support the academies, you would just type in smile.amazon.com. And that's the key there. You can't just go to amazon.com and shop, you have to do smile.amazon.com. So there is some educational component to this. If you are signed into an account, I'll show you the other screen, what it's going to look like. And you can only support one charity at a time. So if you already have something signed up and you say, for this shopping trip, I want to switch to this charity or that charity, you would just click on the link to get there. Let me see it here. And so in this case, right now, I have my own personal one. I'm setting it up for my church. But if I'm logged in here and I click on this link, would you like to change your charity to the New Britain Academy Foundation? I'm going to click on yes, change my charity. And then I could start shopping. And again, you see this pop up here. I'll enlarge it. It says thank you. Now when you shop at smile.amazon.com, which you have to type in, all of my purchases will support the academies at the high school. And then you can install a bookmark on your computer if you're logged in and so forth. So really that's what it's about. The links make it very simple to jump onto and to start shopping. It's a small percentage of things. I don't buy a ton. My wife buys all the boxes. I mean, I get boxes every single day in my house. My wife first.
Does she know you're telling her?
No, she has no idea. She got another Amazon box today, but if she's connected, and someone, you shop a lot, you can generate probably, up to $100 a year maybe. I've generated $4 for my church. Again, I don't shop a ton on Amazon, But if you do shop a lot there, then, and it all adds up, you get 20 people to sign up, 50 people to sign up, and so forth. It just kind of goes from there. So we'll be promoting this one first, and then again, for everyone who's listening, if you're a principal, if you have an organization within your school who want to do this, there's a process you have to go through on Amazon, and I can get directions out to everyone this week on that, and then you can sign up and we'll have a spot on the website for all those Amazon Smile organizations.
Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
Another, just kind of spotlighting a partnership that's really, I think our Climb Higher students have been on CCSU's campus now. This is our 3rd year. And we have really 2 of our staff with some of our job coaches that are over at CCSU. But the benefit of that is being immersed in a college campus, being able to eat in the student center, being able to just walk among peers. But you'll see here that we have one of our students who has officially been accepted as a matriculated student starting in the fall of 2021. I just have to shout out to Ann Gale and Dory Luminos. They are amazing at what they do. They are the teachers there. Donna Swaby too, who's working alongside them as well. So that's just a small thing, but it's huge, right? Especially when we talk about every child in New Britain, right? There's a space and a place, and we have to make sure that we reach it. So that's great news. Jeff just gave us an update on our digital divide, or you can just see from the table below and read that 100% is what you're always shooting for. But if we compare where we were to where we are now, we have about almost 97% of our students who are connected. That is much better than where we were last April, when we were struggling to just get 70%. So I wanted to give you that as well. And there's a couple of other things I wanted to celebrate. Oh, our Manufacturing Academy here at New Britain High School has earned distinguished status through the National Academy Foundation, followed by our Finance Academy as well as our Health Academy. Both have reached distinguished. And so the Met being as new as it is, it's quite an honor. And there are really 4 components that you're measured on. And they are having a full functioning advisory board that's comprised of at least 80% business partners, 20% staff. And we've just listed some of the partners, our business partners that have been with us every step of the way. Some come in and go out, some help with curriculum. So it's pretty fluid, but there is a standing advisory board for our Met Academy. We have about 20 of our students who have started the coursework for the Manufacturing, Engineering, Technology Academy, and we anticipate those 20 working with Jerry Berthium and Angela DeFonso and I can't remember who else, just placing them in the pre-apprenticeship program, which is a win for our state, our city and our state in terms of this pre-apprenticeship and walking out of high school, being able to choose college if they want in the evening or choose college during the day, but they can walk out making a really good salary or, competitive to work in a manufacturing, which we know there's about 13,000 open jobs in Connecticut around that. And then the other thing I do want to just say on the camera is we will be relocating our central registration, which is currently at Slade, in the back of Slade. I'm sure, this has been for years, that Fern Street location. I think we all kind of know it, we go by it. Okay, so do you know where HRA, our preschool is? On the corner of Corbin and Burritt? Is it Burritt? No, not Burritt.
It's the old Franklin, the old Ben Franklin School.
Oh, is it Clinton?
Yeah.
Clinton Street.
Yeah, it's the old Ben Franklin School.
But
So if you just keep going down there, we have Pathway Senderos is on the right, and then just a little further is this, and this was built
Built by the Housing Authority,
It's a brand new building, not so new now, maybe 8 years old.
Yep.
And we've looked at the space for different things for over several years. What could we put there? So it will be shared with adult education will be going there. So they'll have they'll have their address, which is really nice, as well as our central registration. High school registration will still remain at the high school, but they will be sharing space with our adult ed. A lot of perks, and I put a lot of the perks down there. It's a beautiful building. It's going to be nice for our adult education students to be able to go there. It's cool. It's actually better in terms of the bus line. It's quicker than it is Slade getting off, going down Corbin and up Steele. So that will be happening probably around July. I believe that Central Reg will be going after the push in the summer and then kind of relocating more towards once the kids are in. But I do know our adult ed is gonna be going in sooner. They'll start. Yep, there's some work to do for it too. And the rest are just updates from the department. And I just, again, just showing the work that we do every month in every department is massive. We do so much. I just want to thank my cabinet and my central office staff and I did send out a message last Thursday, we had quite a few people absent. That was after the first vaccination, where we deployed our central office building over to all of the schools. We did have some staff that were PE teachers. We had a plethora of people going into the classrooms, and it was really a nice effort just by teachers that were in that were feeling okay, and everyone kind of just pitched in. So we're hoping it's a little quieter this coming Thursday, but I can't be sure. And then the last thing is we do have the conversation this Thursday, 1 o'clock to 2:30. Board members are invited as well as city council members. I have heard back from, I think, 4 city council members who can attend. They'll be there. Some requests to maybe hold them at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And of course, we can be flexible with it. And the things that we're going to be talking about this time is really our second and third floor. We're going to be focusing on our talent and HR office, as well as our pupil service office, and also our reopen plan. That'll be the first agenda, and then hopefully folks will give some items that they want to hear about, learn more about, and that's it. That's about it.
Okay. Any questions or? I had one question about the, oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Quick question.
Yep.
With regards to the manufacturing,
Yep.
advisory, right, that they.
The advisory board, yeah.
Is that something that we can, listen in on or just attend or?
I am sure, Sandra, those are meetings that are open to everyone. They're early in the morning, Tina, I just want you to know that.
I'm thinking anytime to put the kids on the bus, I can.
Probably not, but Sandra, you guys are high school, you all think high school, you start at 5 in the morning. What time is the advisory meeting? You're on mute, dear.
Sorry about that. 8 to 9:30 in the morning are the advisory board meetings, and then our action group, our subcommittees, meet at different times throughout the day or throughout the month.
So you can sit in, it's 8 o'clock in the morning though.
And they've been virtual, obviously during this time as well. So, yes.
So as it's virtual, is there any way that I can shoot you a message just to give you my email address so that I can be able to, is that all right?
Yeah, just, throw it my way, I'll throw it to her.
Okay, perfect,
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
had a question about the Google Classroom stuff on the first page.
Yeah,
I'm assuming this is cumulative, we've had that many students log on since the start of the
are you
year.
asking, is it consistent
I'm
versus
sort of wondering-
cumulative? Is it a rolling?
You got the cumulative, and then what does it feel like on any given week?
What's the engagement?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna have Jeff answer that if he can. Did you hear the question, Jeff?
Yes, I did. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, it must be these great microphones, Jeff.
Yep. So on weekly, we average about 90%, and the 96 is the month of March itself. However, there was really very little difference between the month of March versus going all the way back to the start of the school year for that range.
Okay, great. Better than I thought.
I have a quick question. Do we have any updates on the SRO reports?
That's happening tonight, actually. That's happening tonight.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
Good.
Quick question. You said that, this Thursday was the first community conversation?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm sorry, what time was that and where?
1 to 2:30, boardroom. I'm a little nervous because I'm getting my second shot on Wednesday, but I'm not gonna worry. It'll be fine.
Advil and caffeine.
Advil and caffeine, yeah, that's about it. Okay, maybe I missed it. I didn't see anything about Howls, and I've had a couple of people ask me questions about, like, so how are kids selected for Howls? Is that based on tests? We didn't do tests last year, sort of like just trying to figure out.
So we do test. Leona's not here. What we built in was, we're not doing it in March anymore. We do it when kids enter. So for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, oh my goodness, you're gonna challenge me to remember the name of the test right now.
Ravens.
What is it?
The Ravens?
No, yes, thank you. The Ravens test. And so we are testing all 3rd, all 4th, and all 5th graders, and the 5th grade scores are the scores that we use to determine one of the factors. It's not the only one, Merrill. So, right, we're not doing tests in January now. It's something that we are using just so we can identify and nurture our students from 8 years old on up.
Okay.
And if you have any questions, you can email Leona, have them email Leona Clerkin.
Okay.
All right?
All right. Any other questions about the superintendent's report? All right, let's move on to next item, which is, can I find it? Committee reports. Policy?
Policy had a very tight 20-minute meeting, maybe, 15, 20 minutes, but we moved, I believe it's 3 or 4 policies that are on the agenda for tonight. Yeah, four policies that are on the agenda for tonight. And as it always stands, anyone from the board who has any questions or suggestions of policies that we should look at, please feel free to shoot me an email.
Okay. And finance and facilities.
Well, you can thank me later that most of it is on the consent agenda, so I'll just go really quick. Like, we have a lot of technical items. If we bring back the tents, like the technical items are going for low performing schools. They applied for a grant and they ordered a bunch of stuff using those dollars. And then some software stuff for the computers that were donated, the 2,000 computers that were donated, we had to do some upgrades there. Some school radios or the walkie-talkies. What else? One of my favorites, they're doing a playscape for Little Kings for child development. And then my biggest favorite is obviously the donation, right? Calculations, like $2,500 from Carmine and Franklin and Jeannie Foundation, like 3D printer, books, an outdoor, something for home without looking at the agenda. $55,000 from American Savings Foundation for summer learning, like See, Create, and Extreme, pretty cool stuff. And then $40,000 from Community Foundation for summer C, for the C program. So I think we were in the double letters for finance and facilities that night.
We were.
Yep. Okay, and personnel?
Personnel and curriculum, we had a combined meeting, and it was to talk about the recovery plan. And we have some personnel items on the consent agenda for job descriptions and new positions.
Okay. And you,
Yeah, so curriculum, we were joined, and so we saw we got a comprehensive presentation on the recovery plan. And quick question, that was submitted like a few days after we saw it? It has now been submitted?
Well, the state has since changed the goalposts a little bit. Isn't that funny?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. We laugh all the time. But yeah, now they're not saying they need it so much. They don't need, they wanted us to go through the exercise.
Oh.
And now it's not due. So that, we're gonna send it anyway.
Of course, because, hello.
Sandra.
Okay.
So yes, it was due.
I was going to say.
It
large
was due initially, and I know it was from multiple perspectives and multiple districts that I work with. So yeah, that was presented to us, and we were able to ask questions and give feedbacks and whatever, in case there was anything to tweak before your submission.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something there's nothing on the agenda related because there's nothing to vote on because the plan was supposed to be approved by the state.
We
And they
will be getting a
probably
critical
found
technical
themselves
friend,
not
right?
having the time on their hands to review all those plans, which happens all the time, so.
Right, okay.
Okay, board reports? Any board members?
Baseball season, the girls basketball team, let's see what else. Girls basketball team lost in the first round of the playoffs, I think, but then played like Consolidation. Baseball season, you can actually go in person, go support like our kids, wear your mask. That's it.
Tomorrow afternoon, right? 3:45.
I think they kick off, like they've been playing scrimmages, I think it's
Yeah.
tomorrow, right?
But I think it's 3:45 tomorrow.
Any other?
I don't have the info in front of me, but the musical, yeah, Nonsense, it's gonna happen in April at the park. I already bought my 10 tickets because my kid is one of the only 5 people in it. Because initially they were going to do it online, only, so it's great that there is an opportunity to perform it in front of a live audience. And so I think an email was sent to us, right?
Yeah,
With that,
we got
I
one.
wanted to say the date out loud, but I apologize because I did not pull it up in time. But
I can get it.
at some point in April, Walnut Hill at the show, you can go see the Nonsense performance.
April
Mrs. Sarah, if I could jump in,
April
the show
23rd.
is gonna be Friday, April 23rd at 7 PM.
There you go.
Thank you.
Nonsense is the show.
Was getting there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to our esports presentation.
Yep, and I'll introduce Smedley, and I think Jordan's here, and Lisa Kowecki. And just to give, and we did talk briefly about the esports as a part of our recovery plan for the high school, but we said we'd go more in depth this month, and so that's what these folks are up there, going to give us an overview. Thank you.
Great, thank you, and good evening, everybody. I'm gonna take over and present a slideshow here for you that was presented to the cabinet. Give me just 1 second. We're gonna present. Okay, so can everybody see the screen there?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So we're presenting about the Esports Gaming Room, which will be located at New Britain High School. There's a room in the MET Academy area, room 539 it's better known as. It's been used as a swing space or storage space for some time. It was the former electronics technology room. The room currently has a temporary wall and shelving, concrete floor, the 1960s green walls, and some old fluorescent lights. As you may have seen already, over the last few years, I was able to work with Sandra Sanford and her team to renovate the technology wing. We added epoxy floors, which is a newer modern finish for industrial type rooms. They all got a fresh coat of paint, new LED lights, and we cleaned up some auxiliary items in those rooms to make them modernized for the MET's purpose. We intend to do the same thing for room 539. This is what the example of the room will look like, emptied out and prepped to be painted. The esports gaming room, Ms. Kowecki is going to explain a little more in detail about the curriculum side of it, but as a team, a collaborative team, we came up with what we're calling a hive of technology to be used in the room, and there'll be some cross-pollination of technology opportunities. So the room will be multi-use, which means we can promote engagement of different classes or presenters or whatever activity would be best suited for a class or group in that room. Obviously the gaming is the central part of the room. It is a CIAC sanctioned activity, which Lisa will explain as well. But we're also going to build in the ability to have a maker space in the room for students from the MET Academy to use space surrounded by the technology and use that technology for their benefit. And of course, the learning and presentations follow naturally there. I'm going to let Lisa Kowecki take over for this slide to talk about the ecosystem within the EHI.
Yes, thank you. So you see, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so if you see here, kind of evolved from the idea of having esports, which is a CIAC sanctioned event. There are several teams within the state that are competitive with in CIAC sports. The four main areas here, though, that we're trying to stress, aside from athletics, is academics, recruitment, and retention of students. And to stress that this is more than just gaming. This is an avenue for students to gain scholarships and explore career paths. The space will be utilized during school hours and after school. Students were already surveyed for interest in esports, and we had about 50 student responses, and several of them have expressed that they are actually currently gaming for over 5 hours a day. So we figured, why not entice them to come to school? They can game in school. They'll be in classes for the academic portion of it. Again, I'm not going to pinpoint every single point on this, but there's a lot that can be learned through gaming, character development, career pathways. Within the room, aside from just gaming, there is opportunity for broadcasting the gaming. There's opportunity for students to learn marketing, graphic design, multimedia production, coaching, and management. The quick flow of gaming, it incorporates a lot of STEM engagement. And I want to stress here that currently there are over 150 collegiate esports programs, and there is currently about $16 million out there in college scholarships for gamers. Some of our students within that survey also had commented already that they currently earn money through gaming. So there's a lot of opportunity here. Coming down the road, year 2 and year 3 of this, we'd like to incorporate some actually academic classes and use it to enhance our curriculum. Coding, students can design and create their own games. There's a Unity Learn platform where curriculum is already incorporated for gaming. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and we're excited to get it going.
Thanks, Lisa. So as we talk about refurbishing the room, the esports gaming room or the multi-use technology lab will have to be built out. Jordan Sipek is on the call from MIS, and we've all been working collaboratively to design what the space will actually look like. It is still very much a work in progress. This slide is just some internet Googled versions of the broadcast studio and what the gaming room could possibly look like. The slide you have up now is a 2D drawing of a concept for the space. Again, it's still a fluid design right now. We're working with all stakeholders, Mr. Pierce, Sandra Sanford and her team, and us as the technology team to find the best fit for everything that needs to happen. Here's a quick 3D rendering. If you look to the left, that would be the door from the hallway. There'd be a front desk immediately in front of you for check-in, check-out of technology devices. Bottom left side, you see a red couch and red chairs surrounding some TVs. That's one of the gaming areas. In the center of the room, we have 20 computers there for gaming purposes. And towards the right side of the screen, which is the back of the room, presentation area, the makerspace flexible use area there. And there's a little auxiliary room off to the right-hand side. That room would be part of the broadcast studio side. I'm going to stop sharing this tab for just a second, and I'm going to share one more quick tab while I let Jordan jump in to talk about some of the quick technology. We did go and view CCSU's gaming, esports gaming room, which we learned a lot from. So Jordan, I don't know if you can jump in real quick here. Jordan, are you there?
Okay. I'm here.
Oh, Jordan, can you just jump in and talk about some of the technology that we learned about or that will be using the computers and some of the aspects of the design of the room?
Yeah, we're trying to model what CCSU is doing and what they've had success with. So we're looking at Alienware gaming PCs. We're looking at a dedicated circuit to go directly out. This will prevent any lag in any games and make for a smooth, competitive gaming environment.
Great, thank you. So what Jordan is talking about there is the ability for the gamers to reach sites easily. They're not going to be using their own devices. These are school computers, obviously. Wi-Fi will still exist in the room. And as I mentioned, we're working with all stakeholders to come to the middle for the best actual layout and design of the room. So we're happy to entertain any quick questions if there are any.
I think I missed it. Where is it located in the building?
This is in the Tech Ed Wing, room 539.
Oh, okay.
That's the proposed location.
Any other questions or?
I mean, I just want to say I am really looking forward to this, and I am.
Future board meetings.
But to echo some of what was said in the presentation, the opportunities for students in this are phenomenal. And it ties in so much to other things that are high interest. Video editing, tying it in with music composition. There are people who spend literally hours taking in-game footage, creating their own montage videos type things. There's work that can be done if we're developing teams around it, people who can develop promotional material type stuff for the teams and do it in some passion. And they're learning solid video editing skills. It's not easy to put one of those things together. And people do this in their free time for enjoyment and because they're passionate about these games. The sports casting for it is very impressive and intense. If you go on and just hop on YouTube and watch some of the people who sports cast these types of games, they have to have in-depth knowledge of everything that goes into it. Connections to math and other things, especially with a lot of the online competitive games, they are not static. They change frequently, and as new elements are introduced, you have teams that are calculating down to like fractions of percentages what's the most optimal way to do X, Y, or Z. Like the amount of math, technical reading that would go into people who get into this at a deep level, it's that high interest piece that's going to bring students in. I think they're going to get a lot out of it. And I think as much as we say gaming and everyone sort of rolls their eyes, there is so much that you can do in this. It's a $1 billion industry, more than. The gaming industry is billions and billions of dollars. And there's lots of career opportunities in it, so I'm glad to see it that it's actually being included as part of that technology wing, right? It's being tied into what we're doing with the NET type stuff, because it is right in there. It really is cross-disciplinary when you talk about STEAM and STEM education. This is it. So as much as people like to make jokes about it being, because it is gaming and I'm a gamer and I'll own it, but at the same time, there's a lot there that's going to inspire our children, our students, and all for it.
Great.
Tony's gonna say.
I just want to add on, because I know almost nothing about gaming, but in layperson's terms, there's a lot more under the hood that our kids can learn about the actual development, production of games than more just playing the actual games.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's so exciting about it.
Yeah. And even just playing the games, there's a lot of knowledge that has to go into knowing what to do, and teamwork and collaboration and
Problem solving.
practice and problem solving and coming up with new, there's a lot. It goes deep.
I agree.
So I'll ask some practical questions. Is this a class or is it after-school activity? I'm a little confused. What is it going to be?
So Lisa and Smedley, you can talk, and then Sandra, you can talk a little bit too after. I think she's still here.
So I'll jump in. We're designing the room in a space, in some adjacent space, so that it can most certainly be used during the day for some of the MET classes. The lab, the esports gaming part of it is intended for tier 3 approach for student re-engagement as an after school program. Lisa, I'll let you jump in if I missed anything there.
Yeah, so it's been sponsored CAAC sport for a few years now, and there's other schools within the state that are highly competitive. There's actually 2 conferences. There's the CIAC conference, and then there's also the East Coast Conference, where students are online and they're gaming with students in other states. We use the Play VS platform for this, and they schedule competitions, and there's 2 formal competitive seasons where students are paired up, various games. You have teams of 5, other games you have teams of 3, and we are looking to hire a coach to kind of work with these students, and they do practice and they game together and they compete against each other. CCSU was actually the host site of the last regional competition that CIAC held. So we went right to CCSU and the source, and they've been a great help in this partnership. And I don't know much about gaming myself, but I did think of brainstorm some ways with Len Cordo, who he actually was a big part in this initial idea. I didn't realize he was a tech guy like that, but we did see an opportunity to engage a student population that we might not see engaged in after-school programs or any type of programs. And like I said, when we did our initial survey, we got about 50 student responses, and the majority of the students noted that they currently were not involved with after-school activities or even in-school activities, because they go home and game for 5 to 7 hours, they said a day. So, I mean, kids gaming at home by themselves versus kids coming into school and seeing other students that game and forming bonds and making connections, so.
Well, great, thanks, Lisa.
Go
ahead, yep. Yeah, thanks, Sandra, yep.
Okay, hello again. Yeah, so the piloting is initially to be after school with the eSport component, but during the day, the goal is to be able to implement the existing MET courses as well. Ideally, you know, we like to pilot things after school to see the interest and the sustainability, and then embed it throughout all cross-curricular into the coursework, and to expand upon what we are teaching during the day, and to, I believe, someone said it earlier, is to capture not just the gaming component, but all the aspects of engineering and technology that go into gaming. So that the goal is to be during the day, MET, after school esports, and then eventually blend the 2.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so now we have a presentation on the SROs.
Yes, SRO. So Damon, thank you, Smedley and Lisa and Sandra and Jordan. And so if we could have Donna Swaby and Damon Pierce.
Okay, good evening, everyone. If you just give me a minute, please, I will pull up our presentation.
This is our SRO report, quarterly report.
Okay, and so can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let me just make sure I put it in. Thank you for bearing with me here. I'll put it in present mode. Just a second. Okay, and so what you're looking at is in present mode, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so, let's see here, I just want to make sure I can. Okay, so I'm just going to start by sharing with you our data sources for the summons data. These are not
herself on mute.
Donna, did you mute yourself? We can't hear you.
Sorry about that. She might have gotten home.
Donna, are you
What's her
muted? We
presentation?
can't hear you. Mic is not working.
Jeff?
You try disconnecting and reconnecting?
She wrote something.
May need someone else to present.
Oh, when she started presenting, it stopped working.
Is there somebody else who's got that presentation who can?
I'm sure, well, did we lose, I think she disconnected, she's gonna, here she comes again. Let's see if she can get it up and then she can get on the screen.
Okay, so I tend to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I have a new microphone and I tend to have some difficulty when I am presenting and like on another tab. So I'm just wondering if I can get some support with presenting and then I can kind of speak to the slides. Damon, I don't know if you can present?
You're up.
You're muted.
No, he can't. No, he's unmuted. There we go.
Donna, if you share it with me, I'll present it if you want.
Oh, here we go.
Damon's
looks like
presenting.
Damon's presenting. Okay.
We're all showing off our tech skills. 1 year ago, this wasn't gonna happen.
Can everyone see Damon's presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, so before we have any more technical difficulties, let me go ahead and jump in. So I just wanted to share with you the sources of our information. The New Britain Police Department did provide us with the student names of students who received summons. This data reflects summons that were issued in the 2018-19 school year, as well as the 2019-2020 school year. As a reminder, you know, we did have school closures, so last year's data, the 19-20 data is from August to March. I did get some support here, pupil services, to then obtain demographic data from Power School to align with the student names that were provided to us by the police department. I think that's pretty much it for now. Oh, one thing that I would like to just note before we move on is that the Power School data is their current information, so we have current school, current grade. It may not be the same school the students attended when they were issued the summons, either in the 18-19 or 19-20 school year. So I just want to make that point clear. Next slide, please, Damon. Again, we're going to be looking at the data disaggregated at the district level and a few of our schools. We're going to look at it disaggregated by grade, and then ethnicity and then also eligibility, race and ethnicity and eligibility. So this is our CSDMB data for the 2 school years noted, disaggregated by grade. So these are the numbers of students in each grade. Currently, the grades that they're in currently. And for some students, you know, the grade may or may not be different from the year that they received the summons. You will note that there's an increase in the number of summons that were issued last year versus the year before, despite the fact that you know, it is a shorter period of time, if you will. These students currently attend several of our schools in district. The high school, the New Britain Transition Center, Brookside School, Satellite Careers Academy. These numbers also represent students in some of our out-of-district placements and currently in juvenile detention. And then we also have, as you can see, a number of students who have actually graduated since they received the summons. Next slide. Okay. Okay, so here we're looking at the district level data disaggregated by race or ethnicity. Again, when we look at the data that's disaggregated by race and ethnicity, and we compare current percentages, so with those current percentages with the percent of Hispanic and Black students who receive summons in the 1819 and 1920 school years, we do find overrepresentation of our Hispanic and Black students. And again, I just want to be clear, the percentages, those 2021 totals, those are our current percentages of Hispanic students. Our current percentages of, Black and African American students. Those percentages may have been different in the 1819 and 1920 school year, but not by much. There isn't much fluctuation with that. So I also just want you to be clear on that. But again, we are seeing that overrepresentation. Next slide, please, Damon. And then this is our data disaggregated by eligibility. Again, when considering eligibility, I focused on students with disabilities, so eligibility under IDEA, as well as eligibility for English as a second language or bilingual services, right? So our special ed and our English language learners. And again, when we're comparing our current percentage of students with disabilities with the percent of students with disabilities who receive summons in the 1819 and 1920 school years, there's an overrepresentation of our students with disabilities. However, we're making the same comparison for English language learners. Overrepresentation is only noted in last school year, the 1920 school year. Next slide, please. And Damon, I think this is you.
Damon, you might be muted.
He's having the issues.
He may be having the same issue I had. Yes. Do you want me to go over them or do you want me to present? My mic is not working. Okay. Yes, I'll go. Okay. So again, similar information, but this is just for New Britain High School. The distribution by grade, as well as the distribution by grade, I should say, for the 1819 and 1920 school year. Again, we do see this increase in the total number of summons that were issued last year as compared to the year before. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. Thank you. So Damon just wants me to make sure that I share that grades are determined by credits at the high school and not by cohort. So when I mentioned earlier that they may or may not be in the same grade, it's for that reason. If they don't earn enough credits, for example, we may have a 9 repeater. From last year they were a freshman and they may still be a freshman in this school year, just depending on whether or not they earned enough credits to move on to be a sophomore. Okay. Next slide. Again, our data disaggregated by race and ethnicity at the high school. We are seeing overrepresentation of our Hispanic students. Again, we're comparing the number or the percentage of students who earned, Hispanic students who earned the summons in 1819 and 1920 with the current percentage of Hispanic students in the district. We also see overrepresentation in the 1920 school year for our Black and African American students. However, slightly under the current percentage in the 1819 school year.
Just a question.
And again,
a question: where do Middle Eastern kids fall in that breakout?
We don't have any in any of the schools in terms of the summons data. Here at the high school, we do have a few white students and we have one Asian student. And you'll see later on in the presentation, we also have one American Indian.
So the question is, does that mean that there are no Middle Eastern kids who had summons, or we don't have a system that tracks Middle Eastern kids from any of the other, that we put them into one of these other categories?
So there were none that were noted. I would have to double check our data to see if we have a designation for Middle Eastern students. We do have a I don't think we do now that I'm thinking about it. I know that we have multiple race or ethnicity, but I don't know if there's anyone else, maybe Jeff can speak to whether or not we track that, that race or ethnicity.
That is not something that is part of the race and ethnic breakouts that are asked of parents specifically. So if you were to try and delve deeper into that, you would really have to maybe look at primary language or language at home being Arabic to try and get that best. But it is really in between how they're classifying in the multiracial checkboxes, to which that community probably can vary considerably.
Okay.
Hopefully that helps.
Yep, just curious.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Next slide, please, David. Okay, and again, this is our breakdown at New Britain High School by eligibility. Again, we are looking at overrepresentation for our students with disabilities, as well as our English language learners currently at the high school. Next slide. The other two schools that I'm going to share data with you about this evening is Brookside and Satellite. The other sites, the numbers were less than 5, and so we're just going to focus on the 3 buildings within the district, that had more than 5 students. And so again, looking at the distribution by grade for Brookside, it's more evenly distributed in the 18-19 school year than in the 19-20 school year. But numbers are low there. Next slide. And I do want to note that the principal of Brookside School, Jason Miramont, did advise that only one of the students currently on these lists received the summons while at Brookside. So all the other students received them. Let's see, there's a total of 23, so 22 of them received their summons at a different school. So they were attending a different school at the time. Again, I think of note for this slide is that in the 1920 school year, 100% of the students who received summons that are currently enrolled at Brookside were all Hispanic. Next slide. Okay, and then again by eligibility, we're right at the 70% percent of students with disabilities who received summons. Last school year, we were slightly overrepresented, or students with disabilities were slightly overrepresented in the 18-19 school year. And currently, Mr. Miramont reported that he doesn't have any English language learners, which could indicate that they're in a different placement at this point in time, or perhaps they transferred out. Okay, yep, thank you. Next slide. And again, there's the satellite careers distribution by grade. no ninth graders last year, and only one the year before. Next slide. Okay, so again, none of these summons were issued when the students were Satellite Career Academy students. All of the students represented here received the summons elsewhere. Looking at the current percentage of Hispanic students at Satellite, we're slightly under the percent of Hispanic students who received summons in the 2 school years. Again, with Black and African American students, they're 12%, 12.3%, so we're, oh, I'm sorry, I take that back, I'm sorry. So for Hispanic students, we are actually overrepresented both years. Apologize for that. And then for Black and African American students in 18-19, there's overrepresentation. But then there are no students currently at Satellite that are Black or African American that received summons. We have 1 white student and 1 American Indian. Okay. And then the last slide by eligibility. Again, we're looking at overrepresentation of students with disabilities for both years. But for English language learners, there was underrepresentation, if you will, or at least there wasn't any overrepresentation for Satellite. So that is essentially our presentation, our data analysis of the data that was received, the student names that were received from the New Britain Police Department. This is sort of the end of our presentation in terms of the data analysis. And unfortunately, we are seeing a theme similar to, I think, what started us on this journey last year, with the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all of the unrest that occurred at the very beginning of the pandemic as well. We are seeing that there are some similar sort of institutionalized trends that exist in our data here in our small school district here. Are there any questions?
Yep.
Actually, I do have a question, it's Gail. Do you have the breakdown of the summons versus an arrest? Because the summon comes from the court. So that's not necessarily our SROs, right? Like, how many arrests were actually made in the school?
And were the summons related to something that happened while they were in school, or was it?
Outside.
Is it outside? And now they just know that's where they are, so they're coming to give them that summon.
So I'm gonna ask Damon to unpresent. If he could turn off his presentation, maybe you can get your microphone to work. Nope.
Nope.
Try refreshing your meet.
He said, wait a minute.
Oh, he's
looking down here.
All right, he's here.
I was so confused.
No, he saw him put the mask on, like, what is he doing?
I thought Donna was in the next room. I thought he was gonna run to Donna.
I just got a text that said a summons in school is.
I can't answer that, so.
I have vanquished it.
All right, so you have to repeat it, Gail, because he was running.
No, so when I look up, like, this is, a summons and an arrest, they're 2 different things. The summons comes from the court, right? So how many kids actually got arrested?
So according to our SROs, they issue a summons.
So they're arresting them, okay.
They're not, an arrest is when you're taken into custody.
Gotcha.
So we've had no arrests here. Students have been issued summons to appear in court.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, were you asking if the crime was for something that happened here? scale? Is that what you're trying to find out?
Did they get arrested for something that they did in school, or is it coming from?
Yes, that does not include incidents outside of school. Those are all inside of school. And unfortunately, we can't tell from the data that they gave us, but I can tell you anecdotally, the vast majority of those summons are related to conflict and students getting into fights.
So, I was gonna ask a follow-up question. Do you have no knowledge of what summons are for?
Well, we can see it'll either be disorderly conduct or something like that, but we can't assume what, what was behind that, and we don't see the narrative.
That gets to, the question of why is there overrepresentation versus underrepresentation? What's being overlooked in some cases versus not in other cases, or over-prosecuted in other cases. That's the only way we, if there's a problem with the way things are being policed, that's the only way we get down to it.
Well,
To know what
there's a problem, clearly, right? Right, so there is clearly a problem. And I believe, and a lot of it, like I said, anecdotally, is related to students engaged in conflicts and in fights. And that's what results in the summons. So our step forward with this, with the superintendent's support, is the creation of a student assistance center. And it's a model designed to help students respond to conflict. And instead of putting them into a discipline, punitive churn, provide them with the opportunity to learn about conflict, to resolve the conflict, and so that they don't continue to engage in this behavior going forward.
And Damon, it's not a lot of gang activity still, is there?
No.
Okay.
We have work to do.
Nick looks at me like this, so I feel obligated to say something. Everyone knows how I feel. But obviously this matches the trends and the arguments against SROs in schools, because it just gives access to an easy, having students start to gain records, and it's not evenly distributed. I have worked in suburban districts, I've worked other places, and students do not automatically get summons for getting into physical altercations. There are other, getting you into a fight in school has not always been a criminal thing, and isn't.
Right, and so that rests upon school leadership. That practice is in place, and that's what we're trying to change. So part of it is, and I hate to speak kindly of the COVID pandemic, but one of the things that this has allowed us is to slowly integrate the SAC into here. So we've been able to have regular meetings with the deans, with the admin team, bringing in Gino from the SAC to make sure that we streamline our processes and make sure that we don't revert to old practices, but that what we are truly doing is redirecting students away from the security suite, away from the SROs, and getting them into a location where we can help them resolve the conflict.
I guess my question in this would be, when we have SROs in the building, because they're currently here, one of the concerns is that it becomes over-policed, like they're issuing these summons. As a district, what have we given them in their tool chest of our SROs, right? Are they issuing a summons because they're obligated to? Is it a choice? Is it something that, what makes it go to that level as opposed to being handled as a conflict resolution, as a, mediation, some type of thing between the students? Why is it that seems to be, in many cases, is it those instances are above and beyond? Or is there something that we can do to, enable the people who are responding to some of these incidents to have a better tool set to deal with them, so that we don't end up, shoving people into the criminal justice system who honestly shouldn't be there, right? If every dumb kid in Farmington who got into a fight got a criminal record,
People will be upset.
Right.
Yeah, that would be fired, people would be fired, right? It doesn't, and it will not happen.
For all sorts of reasons, right? But
so SROs are not an extension of the school discipline procedures, right? That's not their role. They shouldn't be involved in that. And it's about leadership taking a much more proactive stance when we have conflict to redirect the students and not have them even report to the security suite, where typically where they have greater likelihood to interact with the SROs. It's about us getting them into the SAC where we can help resolve the conflict. So, I mean, to me, it's about us improving our practices and supporting students who are in that type of a crisis.
Out of curiosity, when the SROs get involved, say it's a physical altercation between students, is it like a teacher that's calling in the SROs, or is it something that the SROs have witnessed themselves?
So typically, the school resources officers are not even called to respond to a fight. That's usually what would happen is a staff member would report it, and the school-based campus safety officers are the ones who would report and deal immediately with the altercation. So unless it's a really egregious situation, the SROs don't typically, they don't even respond. I think the one exception used to be in the CAF where there was an extra duty officer, but that position has been removed and the response redirected.
So is it the campus security who contacts the SROs when they've had a fight, or how's
No,
that?
so typically how the SROs, it's sometimes a matter of just sheer proximity, and there's no excuse for this, but the campus safety suite is also the location of the SROs, right? And so we almost set ourselves up for this situation, which is why we need to redirect it and to the SAC.
I'm just going to ask it so Dr. Sims doesn't have to. If that is the primary cause of these summons being issued, and if it's something where, as a district, we're acknowledging that we would be better served by changing our practices, why at this time are we leaving the SROs in the building? Is there a benefit to having them in the building? And does that benefit outweigh what we're seeing in this data? And, just curious your thoughts on that.
I would say let's wait till we hear from the students. Now, we have issued that survey. It didn't go out until last week, unfortunately, and my concern is we only have 25 responses so far. And those responses, and we can share that with you, what we've received so far. There's a lot of positive feedback from the students on this, but my fear is that survey is not reaching students who typically are disengaged from school or are more likely to have an interaction with the SROs. So that's why I think we really need to look in that deeper next year when we have the students in the building and we can do.
Has a link to the survey going out on social media or a reminder to get more parents to make sure that the children are completing the survey?
The AP sent it out to their cohort using their email blast, and that's how typically we've been communicating with students right now.
So a lot of the other surveys have been, there's been an announcement of them on social media because, I think a lot of the children that really need to fill out this survey are probably not engaged. Maybe that's another way that we can get to them.
We can do that.
Matt cannot.
I was going to say me and Matt, we can do that.
And by you and Matt, you mean Matt.
I don't know if he's still here. I got to call him.
And you're surveying high school students? Or?
High school students. Not ninth graders, only because they haven't been in the building yet to have had an interaction.
Right.
There have been, I mean, and I know that sometimes the numbers might be a little bit different because a child might have stayed back, but it did seem that there was a great number of ninth graders that have received summons.
And the next highest level, this is fortunately here, are actually the juniors. And that's typically because, and Mike can correct me if I'm wrong here, but that's typically because it's based on credit accrual. Those are typically the 2 grade levels where struggling learners are kind of where they parse, or where they plateau, thank you, grade level, where they plateau. And so that's why you would see those grade levels overrepresented.
So when you say you're not sending it to ninth graders, you're not sending it to the cohort?
That's correct.
Because he's sending out via cohort, which doesn't always align with grade, which was because of the credit.
I mean, all of that is bad, but of course, the abysmal representation of students with disabilities, which, I mean, obviously usually struggle with conflict resolution and stuff like that. I mean, there's just so much
regulation,
with that pattern, but. The student survey is one piece of data, and I know that we've talked about that,
Yep.
but I'm always cautious about data that just holds up processes, because if we also see the data, understand the background, and as adults have the responsibility to make some decisions, we can't just let it hang on the student data to either, push for having or not having the SROs. That's one piece, but it can't be, far from the only or the heaviest of the factors.
It also appeared that this data was, there's a lot of retrospective, like reconstructing data, as opposed to having regular reports.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly what it
Right.
was. So going
Which is
forward,
part of
we're
the
saying-
agreement, and it was never happening.
Right.
Right.
So we have a baseline now. Now we need to get into the.
How?
It's weird in that we've got so few students in the building on a given day, and that's going to make.
But you have no summons this year.
No.
None this year, so those were 2 years prior to this year.
Yeah.
So that's why data this year is obviously
Right.
part of the design and not, valid.
We have all these kids that are gonna be coming back soon.
Mhm.
So what are these numbers gonna look like, this time next
June.
year?
Oh, yeah.
It's very, very concerning.
And what conflicts have been brewing in the community that have not even been on the radar of school.
Yep.
Right. Like, are we more concerned with them being arrested, or are we more concerned with being arrested and there's not necessarily the crime that fits being arrested? Right, if they were out in the normal world, would they be arrested for what they got arrested for in school? Is that the worry, or?
So,
I don't know that that's a good measuring stick, but I hear you.
Well, I'd also say that, there's tons of things that my kids do at home where one smacks the other, that technically out in the real world would constitute an assault, but in a school setting or in a home setting,
But it's his daughter.
it's a different thing. Like, I don't know how many of us on the board got in fights when we were younger, right? Yeah. But either with siblings or at school, and I'd also wonder how many of us have a criminal record because of it.
That would
Right.
be, that would be my concern, Nick, is this going to be, those are just summons, what's the after effect? Does that show up someplace on their record, or you don't know the answer to that, right?
I do not.
Yeah, because that's the thing, when you get a kid that does something crazy at this age, and then we know now you can't get an apartment, you can't get a job, that type of thing.
I think if they're minors, I don't know, I'm not sure that it carries over into adulthood, I'm not sure, but for me, what's troubling about the data is I looked at all the kids who got in conflict last year, and then I compared them to chronic absenteeism. 70% of the students who were engaged in conflict, either physical or verbal, 70% of them were chronically absent from school, and 90% of them were what I euphemistically say chronically absent from class. They cut class all the time, 90% of them. So that speaks to me of a much larger problem, is that we've got a whole bunch of kids that are completely disconnected from the whole school, starting at the instructional level. So, any response to this, really, if we want to fix it and address it in a meaningful way, it's a systemic issue. It starts with instruction and then scales out from there.
They go back to their, bad relationship with their fourth grade teacher or something, that's when they turned off, and it's not, not what your high school your teachers are doing with them, but.
Yeah, and students are individuals, and so the perspectives they bring are varied, right? So there's not a single, unfortunately, there's not a single bullet fix to this. It's really.
But the students that have the high absentee, was it in middle school as well? Is it just them being scared to come to the high school, or is it they were like that in middle school too, they didn't attend?
I did not look, I don't have access to the attendance data.
I don't want to oversimplify, but it feels like they have to feel like they belong someplace. They have to connect to the adults, and I hate to bring it back to the simple, but they have to feel like this is a place they want to come to, even though it's massive, that they have a niche and that they connect to someone. That-
Something, yeah.
Yeah, and they feel a part of the solution. That's the simple answer, but it's a simplex.
Well, and it comes back to the question of, does having cops in our building help that?
Right. Right.
And my own personal experience with a son of color is that since last summer, he's a whole lot less willing to think that cops are his friend. Just
Yep, unfortunately.
Okay, any other comments, thoughts, questions?
Will we get a copy of the presentation since it wasn't in any of the
Sure.
Yep.
documents?
Yes.
All right.
Because I know that this would have all gone into play before I came on board, but what was the reason for presenting? Was it that there's a push to take things out, take the officers out? Is that what it is? I'm sorry, I'm just coming in after you guys.
Right. So there were questions asked about whether or not we should have SROs continue in the schools. And then as we dug into it, we realized we were supposed to be getting regular reports, and we had never gotten any reports. So that's what this report was meant to start to change.
Okay, so it was that gap in getting the reporting and actually seeing what the concrete information was, just to be able to kind of account for where we are. But we're not able to use 2020, 2021, we can only use information from the 2 years prior, correct?
Because there's not much from.
Well, no, there's nothing you can really go on.
Right.
Okay, so then with that information, okay, so that's really just filling in the gap for right now, and then going forward, we're gonna be having a reporting process that's going to be more fine-tuned, have a better idea, not just at the close of this year because it's like a dud year.
Right.
But like next year and going forward, being able to have a better idea kind of where you're at.
Absolutely.
Okay, I appreciate it, thank you so much.
Just for reference sake, does anybody know when the current agreement between this, is there an end time to the agreement between the city and the school
I
district?
don't believe so. It's just it's a rolling contract, right, that we do year over year. It doesn't mean that you can't go back in and.
So you don't have to sign it every year?
No.
It was signed once and it stays in
Right.
effect?
And I don't even know if my signature is on that, to be honest
Right.
with you.
No, I don't think there was ever a contract.
It's an agreement.
Police assign officers to the school, or started assigning them probably 20 years ago, around the time of some high-profile school incidents. But there was never, I don't believe, that I'm aware of a written agreement. It became a beat, I guess, is how it was termed back then. I don't even know if that's still the right term. So they assigned officers to the school. Obviously, they did it with our consent.
Right.
And I believe if we told them we
Got
didn't
to
want them,
shoot
then they
it.
would no longer be here, but I don't think there's any formal agreement.
There's an old MOU somewhere. because
There's an MOU about how they, what they can and cannot do with it.
Right, we saw that last
Yeah,
summer.
so there's an old MOU, and then the policy around it because of the
Am I mistaken? I thought there was a conversation sometime last summer about whether there were any specific qualifications that we looked at when assigning a police officer to the school, whether they
We
had
did
a
talk about
background in community service or social work or.
They have to receive special training in order to be designated as an SRO. And then they rotate in, I believe it's a 4-year commitment. And so every 4 years, two new SROs will come into the building.
So for this report, the information that was on the report, is that what we're looking for, or do we need something more? Or do we need to add another column or something? I mean, that gives us the data, but it doesn't give you much information about what's behind all of that, right? And I don't know if we can get that kind of information.
I was about to say, some of that information falls under FERPA.
Right, anything that's individually identifiable, but if you could say,
Clump it to make
okay, 30% of these were because of this.
Peer-to-peer,
and- Yeah.
right, peer-to-peer disagreements or whatever.
And if you're doing that in a regular basis as opposed to a retrospective basis, it's easier to be able to do that.
And I think,
And it
Damon,
doesn't even sound like it's narrowed to that, you said disorderly conduct is that most common for a fight?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't know how the police determine. They have a little code book where
Yep.
you almost need a rubric to understand why they select what they do. It's a mystery to me.
Right, it's a mystery to many because it's pretty subjective.
But I can say with a large degree of confidence that the vast majority of those summons are because of conflict.
Do you think we can have, I remember way back when my son was in school, we had the SROs come and talk to PTA, and they were actually very calming to the parents who kind of felt the same way. Could we have them come here or Chief Shute, maybe, and just do a quick talk about what their process procedures are supposed to be in the school?
Sounds good.
And if you maybe met them, I don't know. There's only one now, right?
There's two.
There's two?
we took the one away from the cafeteria. That was.
That was an extra duty,
I
yeah.
thought there was always two, one in the cap, one roaming.
So the two SROs are not to be confused. There was an extra duty officer in the cafeteria.
Oh, okay, okay.
And the trouble there is that person was not a trained SRO.
Gotcha, they were-
So it was just whomever had the overtime call. I don't mean to malign the police, but, so, whoever was next on the overtime rosters who landed there. And you definitely want trained officers interacting with
Yes.
students.
I had an officer say some extremely disturbing things to me in the New Britain High cafeteria, and then basically found out it was kind of like, oh, but that's not our officer, so,
And if I remember correctly, when we first decided that we needed them, they were supposed to be more kind of like a resource thing too, where they came into the classroom, they do presentation or talk with the kids or the teachers or whatever. It wasn't so much all punitive the way it's become.
Building the positive relationship.
Yeah, it was help with relationships.
Right, and linking them more directly with the public safety course. I mean, that's an ideal way, path forward and a good goal for them.
Okay. Any further on this?
That's depressing.
Okay, let's move on to
Thank you, Damon.
the
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
old business.
Thank you.
Motion to approve the following revisions to the Consolidated School District New Britain Harassment Policies. Approving the revised 4118.11, policy 5145.5, approving the revisions to policy 4118.112 and 4218.112. The revisions to policy 5145.51 and the eliminations of policies 4118.12 and 4218.12.
Second.
Any discussion?
These are all just the harassment policies, and I believe it was 2 days after the last meeting that we received an email from Mr. Spalding that I forwarded to the board that, there is signs from the federal government that they are going to be changing their stances on this, but given that currently the same federal guidelines are in place, I would still urge that we move with these amendments, and if we need to revise them, again, come later this summer or fall, that we do it at that time. Because there were other things that were cleaned up in these revisions that went through Shipman and Goodwin to bring our policies in alignment with state law, et cetera. If I summarize that correctly, Mr. Spalding?
That is accurate.
So what's in these that we think the current administration in Washington might change from what's in here now?
To speak about it very generally without getting too much into the weeds, there were changes to sort of the due process procedures, and giving more protections in due process to the accused, and trying to strike a different balance between protections for the accuser and protections for the accused. And the current administration has signaled that they may want to shift that back the other way somewhat. And that is the general summary of it.
Okay, that's good. Any other questions, comments? Did we have a sec? Yes, we got a second. That's right. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, we have a very long consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone feels the need to take off?
Item 6E and 6AA.
6E. Personnel transactions and extracurricular appointments, and what was the other one?
AA, which is a purchase order bid waiver for laptops for teachers at Chamberlain.
Okay. Are there any other things that anybody wants to take off?
Can we take off 6G, please?
6G? Okay. Anything else? All right, then with the exception of the noted items, ask the clerk to say that we've voted on, we've approved the consent agenda, and now let's deal with those 3 items that we took off.
Motion to accept the report of personnel transactions and extracurricular appointments.
Second.
Okay.
Motion to amend the extracurricular appointments to add the appointment of Stan Glowiak as the head coach for boys golf.
Okay. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And now we need to vote on the full measure. Okay. On the amended motion. Is there, do we need a second for that? No. Okay. Any discussion on the amended motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next one. 6AA? Or 6G or
Motion to approve the new / revised job descriptions for and the new position requests for the recovery staffing plan as listed in the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay.
I just want to ask a couple of quick clarifying questions. As far as the instructional coaches, we're looking at 1 math teacher per building at the elementary.
At the elementary.
If I'm correct. I was just wondering, thoughts as far as size differences, like North End to Smalley having 1 per school as opposed to like 1.5 to half, like just
Right.
thought processing as far as supporting teachers
And we will probably do that, but we just made it simple by saying 1 per.
Okay.
We recognize math is a really difficult thing for us. But it doesn't mean that North End won't maybe get the 0.5 and again, have a free 0.5 somewhere else, and just looking at our numbers.
Okay.
Yep.
And then one other just quick thing,
Sure.
I know we talked about briefly the teaching assistants, and we talked a little bit about, my concern was supporting grade levels where necessary. Is that something that is also flexible as far as, like we really need the resource in third grade versus K, or are you pretty set on, we're gonna look at the transitional years?
Well, I think, and again, that was from feedback that we'd taken from some community members, because originally it was kindergarten, and then they're like, well, you know what, we really see kids struggle, 5th to 6th, 8th to 9th, PK.
Right.
And I think our plan is to go that way, but it doesn't mean, again, you look at the successes and you see if it's working or not. So that is our original plan. I think that we'd be open, obviously, to anyone's input on, what I don't want to do is start the year and then change them up in a month. I think that would, but there will be freedom, I think, within each building, right? We always say freedom within fences, and as a building leader, where you've got maybe some kids who are struggling. And so I would never say to a principal, no, you can't do that, it has to be kindergarten and 5th grade, or 6th, I wouldn't do that. So they'll get X number, and we always say, you use them the way you need them, but we are designating, we want to make sure our kids transitioning in feel supported.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was probably a vague answer.
No, I understand. I'm just afraid of the kids slipping through the cracks that they're not at those traditional grade levels because the extra support's not there.
And I would imagine the TAs will be also, they'll be working with the classroom teachers, but we have our RTI teams when they meet, and they know the kids who are struggling, and our staff, good or bad, wear many hats, right? Mm-hmm. So I look at our FSLs, who are supposed to have X number on their caseload, they all double it because they know, right? So I don't think that wouldn't happen, Tony.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any further questions or discussion on that item? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, and then the next one is AA, 6AA.
Motion to approve the purchase order and bid waiver for laptops for teachers at Chamberlain Elementary School.
Second.
Motion to amend this, it was merely just a copy-paste error. The amount on the bid waiver purchase order does not reflect the actual quote. So motion to amend the total amount to be $68,473.74.
Okay,
Second.
is there a second? We have a second. That was Annie, seconded?
Oh,
Annie?
no, because they did.
Oh, Diane, okay, sorry.
No, because he said Andy did, Andy did. So there.
Does anybody have questions about this? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the amended motion.
Motion to approve the amended.
Was made, yeah.
Yeah, so we voted on the amendment, now we need to vote on the actual amended version. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right. Now. New business?
Can I make a motion to approve local final plan for Chamberlain project, state project number 890169 RNB.
Second.
Okay. So do we have some presentation on this?
I can't hear us here.
Do we,
Chamberlain
School.
Oh, the sign up for the,
Plans, yeah.
Kevin Dion, are you on? I know he's working on something else right now. He should be on. Mr. Dion?
He is there. I
You
saw
see
him a
him?
second ago.
This is Freddie Allen, if anybody has any questions from KBA.
Thank you, Friday.
Yeah, if there's any questions, I can help.
Oh,
We don't
he's
have the plan, Freddie. Where's the plan?
We had left the plans with all of them last time we were on big board.
Big boards from
Oh,
last
that when they
meeting.
came in, remember?
The
They had
big
them all
boards
over.
that they set up,
Oh, the big boards.
right.
Why did we?
And the plants haven't changed, they're exactly the same plants that we shared that with Kevin. They're exactly the same plants, there are no changes.
I think we want
You know, other than what was requested by Kevin. So we added the doors, just today we got a response, added the doors for the gang toilet. That, it was requested that we do it for security reason and we added those doors.
Doors.
And we have.
Yeah, I'm on it. I have technical difficulty. So I just want to go over, so tonight what we're talking about is a state form. There's a form that needs to be filled out. We have our bid conformance review. That's on April 12th. And what we're asking tonight is that we've gone through the design development. We've gone through other phases. Now we're at the pre-bid, pre-construction phase. So at this point, you've done the flyovers, you've done the programming, you've seen the design development. We've presented everything. And this is just a final review. We've had internal reviews, administrators, as well as specialists. You have the building department, health department, fire department, ADA compliance.
Security, on the security,
Excuse me?
on the security, we did with, your security guys too.
Yeah, so we've had everybody who's a specialist review the plan, and that's where we get into the minutia with the construction drawings and 90% completion. And we have discussions with teachers. So we've been doing all of this behind the scenes. Now we are ready to go before the state and request that the state review our final plans and allow us to bid this out for construction. And so tonight, we have just, one of the phases when you first apply, comes before the board. When you come in for the construction phase, pre-bid, comes before the board, and then when you have a closeout, it'll come before the board. So this is one of the phases where it just comes before the board. And you can ask, Freddie's here to ask any questions or any changes, but most of it you've already seen. We just wanted to present it to you and let you know where we are in the program. And you can ask any questions. Otherwise, there's a form that needs to be filled out. Once it goes, leaves the Board of Ed, gets approval, then it'll go to the SBC, get approval, and then from there it'll go to the Common Council. So all of those committees and boards have to approve everything, and so that we can get go before the state and request to have the drawings approved as well as the funding to be approved, or continue to start to flow.
Nick, do you have anything else?
I do.
Okay.
I just have a couple questions, comments, suggestions type things. And I'm just gonna go through them off of memory. One thing just, and I'm wondering if you've looked at the numbers, is with parent pickup, I love the traffic flow and all of that. With the area off to the side where you'd probably have sort of the parent pickup, I'm curious how many, like, what the anticipated backup there is based off of our numbers of how many students are picked up by parents at the end of the day, versus, you know, busers, and just making sure that we have sufficient space there. And then two other just minor things, and thank you to my wife. One was off of the teacher parking area that's sort of up the hill a little bit, just making sure that there's the appropriate amount of clearance from the stop bar. So when you come in the main entrance and you take a left, there's that stop bar, making sure there's enough clearance from there back to the first parking space. And then also possibly considering we have neighborhood schools and our playgrounds are often accessed sort of on the weekend or by the neighborhood communities, is possibly looking at that patch of land that appeared on the plans to be vacant that leads out to the main thoroughfare there, of possibly adding some sort of bollarded walking path, just so people don't have to necessarily walk all the way up to the driveway entrance to be able to tie into the playground area, or neighborhood families that walk to school can get in through there so they're not walking down the narrow area where the sidewalk is. So those are just a few points of feedback, just something to consider as you go forward with it, but otherwise, really nice plans.
Tina had a question too.
No, my question really was, you're referencing, plans for something that I don't have. So I'm just trying to piece together what you were saying, something happening on the 12th, and that you're at the pre-bid process. So I'm just trying to kind of piece it together. Is there anything that you can share with me, or just tell me where, if I remember correctly, my very first meeting, there was a few people's backs, and there were some
That was the last meeting, wasn't it?
things you guys were looking at that I couldn't see at home. But I'm just curious what it is that he's referencing that maybe could be shared with me, and forgive me, on that particular day, I was referring to you as the guy in the blue jacket, because that's all I saw was a blue jacket. So if there's any way that you can share anything with me, I greatly appreciate it, so that way I can take a look at it from my little humble lens. Is that possible?
Would it be possible for us, obviously, it's on the agenda for tonight, but possibly for a PDF of the layouts to be sent out to the board?
Freddie, can you give them a copy of the link?
Yes, no, it's not a problem. Tomorrow, we can send it to you, Kevin.
And I'll forward it
the
to
site
you guys.
on the PDF and, you know, and if there is any comments that anybody has, you know, we have to just make sure that if you provide access or walk, that we are all, you know, ADA compliant with all the grades. We have no problem accommodating or, you know, incorporating anything we can, because, you know, we still have time to, before we go out to bid, we can incorporate into it. So we will send you tomorrow morning, Kevin, and you can forward it, and any comments we get, we will incorporate it with.
Sounds good, thank you. And just also the police department and public works, as well as traffic engineering, everybody's reviewed the flow, so we do have experts that look at these plans as well.
Yeah, everybody, including the stop parts, everything has been reviewed by the city officials, including the sergeants, the traffic sergeants.
I'm going to just re-ask the question because I don't think you answered this one, but can you just go over again, Kevin, just that timeline? Tina was asking about the timeline. What is this meeting on the 12th? So if you could just kind of walk her through that.
Right, so the 12th is the pre-bid conformance review, and that is where we go before the OSHR, school grants, construction, and where we present the final plans to them, and they review everything we've been working on for our construction documents, CDs, and then therefore we've already had a preliminary meeting with them, most of their comments, but this will be the final review, and from there on, the state will give a stamp of approval, and we'll be allowed to then go out and bid out into the trades, basically bid out the construction project, as well as getting a better timeline for the whole project of itself. So that is April 12th. So today, the 5th, is before the Board of Ed. I believe the 7th is the SPC, and Freddie, is there a special for the Common Council?
We will go, Kevin, when we already met with the state 2 weeks ago, and we have gone through it. Most of the work which is lacking right now is the paperwork that Kevin is working on it, and hopefully we'll have it. So we can have, after one document there, I think it's called SGD 042 or form, that the superintendent signs, the board president signs it. We'll have the board of PBC chair sign that, and then all the other miscellaneous papers we need, we'll scan it, and those are, we would like to send it to the state on a scan by Wednesday, so they have it, so they are reviewing it. And then on 12th, when we review, they already did some comments, we have addressed their comments. They would look at it, and then once everything is in order, they would issue a letter and say that we have complied, and now if the district wishes, they can go up to date. And once that process gets moving, and then we'll work with Kevin and the building committee to advertise it. And CM will have, I believe, 19 or 22 bid packages. And the job will be bid. And then once we get the bid bid, it will be all reviewed. Once it's reviewed, it goes to the building committee for the recommendations. They approve it, and then we are off and running.
Thank you.
So,
Yep.
so just to be clear on exactly what the gentleman just said right now, I believe you said his name was Freddie, correct?
Yep.
Oh, okay, what that young man just said right now. So he is confident that by the time they get to the 12th for their pre-bid performance review, as what he calls it, really his big meeting with the state, that all of the paperwork that he needs from Mr. Kevin is going to already be with him. He's going to have, he already is confident that he's going to have that in time, correct?
Yeah.
Kevin, do you want to say anything on those paperwork?
You will have all the paperwork, correct? You have to get older, you will have it.
Yeah, we have it.
Paperwork. The only issue is with Demas. Demas has to give us a final sign-off, and we're waiting on a Demas approval. But that's outside of school construction or Board of Ed. But anything that's required by the superintendent's signature has already been submitted or will be submitted by the end of this week.
Okay.
So, since this is a document I'm going to get to sign, I'm going to ask my questions now.
Yeah.
In our other school construction projects, we've tried to incorporate greenhouses. Do we have that option at Chamberlain?
As far as of right now, there is no greenhouse. Because it's not in the aspects anywhere and it's not a document. However, if you choose to include greenhouse, we can always talk to the state again, and if they allow it, we can always add it. Doesn't have to be done right now, but we can do that, you know, and we can ask for it since they will allow it. Because I want, just keep that in mind, one of the things is we have far exceeded the square footage. And the way they allow greenhouse, it has to be connected to the building. You connect it to the building, your square footage will go up, and then they may not give you any reimbursement for that, because as you know, we are almost 60% over on the square footage that they have given us a space with.
Okay.
I just asked a follow-up with that.
Yep.
So with the Smalley project, is that what happened? The state wouldn't reimburse the district because I know originally with Smalley there was a greenhouse plan, but it had to get scrapped.
Did you hear that, Freddie?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I did not hear it.
This question was that what happened at Smalley? Because originally there was a plan to put a greenhouse there. Did that get?
It was a Smalley, there was a discussion about it, but it never materialized. On Smalley.
Okay.
We never even prepared any drawings or anything for it. It was never materialized. For whatever reason, it was not came to it for us to design it.
Okay.
So has anything changed based on what we saw back in March? Has anything changed based on your reviews with the different groups that you just mentioned in those plans?
No, nothing has changed. It's exactly the same thing. Only tweaking we did, just like I mentioned earlier, that Kevin has raised a concern from the district about security concerns and provide doors on the gang room, bathrooms, which he said that he would review with the staff and the superintendent. This morning we got an email that said yes, move forward with it, so we just incorporated it into the drawings now.
One of the things with COVID that the state requested was that there be no doors on these bathrooms, but in school safety and security, we need to have doors on these with a hold open, but we don't close the doors normally. The way they're set up, you'll still have privacy with the walls, but to not have doors does not jive with current safety and security plans. Should a teacher need that door. So it was requested to put that in. I believe that was the only major change, Freddie.
Yeah, that's about it.
And I did hear something about ADA, that we're signing off something about ADA? No, we're not? Okay.
No, ADA.
No issues on ADA.
Okay.
I did not check off the box that New
Okay.
Britain High was in compliance.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, concerns? All right. So we have a motion that's seconded on this? Yep. Okay. Seeing no other questions or concerns, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you, Freddie.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, and I just want to let you know as a board that, you know, with Kevin and Smedley and, you know, John Leone and Prokop, Jordan, everybody has been very, very helpful to get to us and answer every question we asked for, and we responded to it, and we accommodated all the questions. So we have addressed their concerns.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item?
Policy Committee moves to approve Policy 9130, Board of Education Committees.
Second.
Doesn't.
Okay.
This is just clarifying and adding some, basic language around our policies. Our bylaws stipulate what the policies are, our bylaws stipulate what our committees are, but they don't go really into any sort of detail as to what any of them necessarily mean, what any of the committees are beyond just the title of it. This also gives sort of just some basic primer for future boards on what committees typically do and how they move items and all of that. This has been something we've been working on for a while now to try to get some language down, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions? All right, seeing no questions, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next item.
Policy Committee moves to approve revised policy 4136/4236, board level grievance hearings.
Second.
Okay, there's a second.
This is just to sort of clean up the language. You can see some of our draft with the strike-throughs. But it's just sort of to clean up the language and make it more closely aligned with our actual policy and practice of what we've been doing. One thing that we did remove at the attorney's advice was the line that was in there talking about DCF reports can be presented as a public document as long as students' names are redacted. That was something that definitely was worrisome and not a good practice, and our lawyers said we should definitely take that out of there, so we did. We also just made it a little bit more clear about how the committee formalizes their final decision, but mostly just cleaning up the language. Again,
Okay.
happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
These next two kind of actually go together, so I'll speak to them both really quickly on the first one, but Policy Committee moves to approve revised policy 1110.4, automated calls / text messages, auto notification system / robocalls.
Second.
Okay.
If you look in the policy, all we're really doing is inserting a paragraph of text that's right in the middle there, and also adding the word "or developmental" to the final paragraph. The reason we're adding this language in is we had another policy called emergency communication with parents, and essentially the entire policy was that one paragraph. And it just didn't seem to make sense to have an entire separate policy way out in the middle of nowhere, where this clearly sort of tied directly into it. So we took the language from that policy and sort of moved it into this policy where it just made much more sense to be.
Okay. Any further questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Policy committee moves to strike policy 5119.
Second.
Okay, we have a second.
As I just said, it's a one-paragraph policy that we just put into the other policy.
Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, finance?
Approved purchase order for culturally responsive books for Smalley Elementary, amount of $28,972.76.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
There's a race for three of you.
Okay, everybody wants a second culturally appropriate
Can I get
books.
one more second?
Okay, any discussion on this?
We did not cut, this did not come through committee, so I don't
No.
know if you.
Andrea's in the bottom left. You're up,
Andrea, you want to tell us what,
Hi, how are you? This is money to be used through our grant for our commissioners on books that will support our ELA units that are culturally diverse and responsive. These are class sets, as well as books for guided reading, and some books for our libraries. This is just supporting our mission to be more culturally responsive at Smalley and in our district.
okay.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Maybe that won't work.
Yeah, right. Okay, seeing no further questions, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
G, approve amended purchase order and bid waiver for special educational instructional coaching by Bridge the Gap Educational Consulting LLC for Smalley, $23,750, Commissioners Network.
Second.
Okay, we have a seconded motion. Andrea, you want to tell us a little bit about this?
Sure. So Bridging the Gap, I came to the board a couple months ago about bringing on a coach for our SPED teachers. That was the amount of about $9,000. Due to the fact that we weren't able to fulfill all of our contract with the climate consultant through Commissioners Network due to COVID and some restrictions, this money that was not spent there is going to be added to our Bridging the Gap to add on more hours, which will allow her to take on more SPED teachers at Smalley for coaching, which has been really wonderful so far. So she's increasing her hours. So it's actually a difference of about $14,000 because it was $9,000 has already been approved. The difference would be 14, so now the whole shebang would be 23.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions on this? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Now we have two,
Motion to add an item to the agenda for the motion to add an item to the agenda, approval of a purchase order for library connections for Pulaski and Slade and New Britain High School in the amount of $160,000.
Second.
okay.
Sandra's on
Sandra?
to talk about.
Before we
Yep.
discuss
Good
it.
evening.
Hang on just a second.
Wait 1 second.
1 second, please.
1 second.
Currently, the vote is to
Okay.
just add it
To the agenda, so we need to vote on it, to put it on the agenda, and then we can talk about it.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion to add an item to the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, now some.
Motion to approve the
Motion,
purchase
okay.
order for library connections for Pulaski, Slade, and New Britain High School in the amount of $160,000.
Second.
Okay. Go.
It's It's not a race.
You gotta be loud and fast. Tanya.
8:25.
Okay,
I know I was gonna vote no to that, sorry.
go ahead, Sandra.
Okay, thank you all. Similar to what Andrea spoke of at Smalley, all of our turnaround schools that are in the Commissioners Network were recently awarded extra dollars on top of the original grants that were pre-approved. And I go into a little bit more detail in the Board of Ed memo. And this is a fast turnaround. They give us the additional funds to be spent by June 30th. So shout out to the academics office and the department to tie into the ELA curriculum as well as updating our media centers. They were able to put together some quotes in order to enhance what they started last year as well as support the curriculum. Very similar to what Andrea was saying, at the 6 through 12 level, the goal is to increase our library, media center, our books, to be more culturally responsive, include diversity, as well as at the high school level, looking at the ELA and enhancing the CTE opportunities and options for our students.
And Sandra, if I can just add to, we really did look to sort of expand our reading levels to allow for accessibility for our students across interests. We're looking, you'll see some Heinemann quotes there. We're looking at the bookshelves, so we're looking at adventure stories and dystopian science fiction sorts of stories and biographies, nonfiction, historical fiction, just really trying to expand our library media centers so that we can make reading a more attractive part of a student's everyday.
Okay. Any questions, concerns? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Yes.
Motion to add an item to the agenda, approval of a tentative agreement for a one-year extension from 2018 to the 2018 through 2021 collective bargaining agreement between the New Britain Board of Education and the New Britain Federation of Paraeducators Local 2407.
Second.
Okay. And this extends the contract for a year, includes a 1.25% increase for. Oh yes, first we have to add it to the agenda. So,
Aye.
so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Motion to approve the tentative agreement for a one-year extension of the 2018 through 2021 collective bargaining agreement between the New Britain Board of Education and New Britain Federation of Paraeducators Local 2407.
Second.
Okay, we have a seconded motion. And just so the folks at home know, this is extending the contract for the paras for 1 year. It includes a 1.25%, not inch, step. I've been measuring stuff recently. To each salary step, but there's no step movement.
So
Okay?
you're adding 1.25% to each step, but they're not moving up a step.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Just to be clear, this is similar to agreements that we had, I believe, with the teachers union, who I believe were scheduled last summer to go into negotiations, but we were able to come to an agreement to push it off a year because obviously trying to go through lengthy negotiations during COVID is less than ideal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me the no step movement?
I'm gonna look to Mary Ellen.
That's about to say, I can as a teacher, so.
Seriously.
Step movement, so if you look at, say, a teacher's contract or the paraeducators, you have usually, steps based on years of experience that they advance through. And so based on your step, and for teachers also based on like your education level, there's a grid and that's where your salary is. So with there being no step movement, everyone would stay where they are at their current step, and this basically just constitutes a general wage increase. Usually when contracts are negotiated, you see both step increases as well as
On top of a grade. Oh.
Yes, so the whole chart typically, if you look at a contract, will have year 1, year 2, year 3, and each of those years, like a step 1 bachelor's, goes up each year.
Yeah.
But then the teachers also advance through the steps, or the employees also advance through the steps as they gain years of experience.
This is more similar to a COLA increase versus moving that step from second year to third year or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries.
Second.
And we have a motion to adjourn. All right.